My name is Al Fiella, and I'm the Union County Manager. I would like to take a minute to outline tonight's agenda for you. First, we will have a presentation from Neglia Engineering Associates on the proposed scope and design of the plan for the field. Following the presentation from Neglia Engineering, you will then hear from Public Safety Director Andrew Moran, who will discuss traffic issues. Following that, our County Counsel, Robert Barry, will discuss process and what the next steps potentially may be. At the end of County Counsel's remarks, we'll take a break for a few moments, and we'll have the questions that you have. So you may submit questions on the forums that you may have picked up already. If you haven't picked one up and you need one, just raise your hand. We have a number of our staff people here who will be glad to supply you with a card and a pencil. Please note that only questions pertaining to the proposed scope and design of the project will be answered at this public presentation. The question and answer session will end at 9 p.m., and I want to thank you all for taking the time to be here tonight. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dave Atkinson from Neglia Engineering to begin the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, County Manager Fialli. I'd just like to thank everybody for being in attendance tonight for our presentation on the proposed improvements to the Rahway River Park. My name is, County Manager had stated, I'm Dave Atkinson. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. I've been practicing engineering now for about 17 years. I'm currently employed by Neglia Engineering as a principal engineer in their office. For tonight's meeting, or for tonight's presentation, I'd like to walk you through a number of different elements of the park improvements. First, starting by the existing surroundings of the park, the different surroundings, the community, and then I would like to lead into some of the environmental constraints that were reviewed as part of the process of designing this park, as well as some of the site constraints and other elements for the park improvements. Once I've gotten through that, we'll lead into the actual proposed improvements for the park and give you a general idea of why we selected the different locations and, as such. So that's our first slide. I will go to the next one. So basically, the first element that I would like to discuss is the park itself. As many of you are aware, the proposed park is situated obviously in Union County and the city of Rahway, as well as within the township of Clark. The park itself, as you'll see, the portion that we are talking about tonight is this track, and the park itself encompasses a circular driveway looping around a two-lane access road with access from Valley Road as well as from St. George. As you will see in here, the majority of the surrounding area is residential homes which utilize this complex as a form of leisure, as well as for the fields and for walking and all sorts of passive items. As you will see directly for the park itself, to the north, to the west, and to the south, we are bordered by the Rahway River. We're surrounded by the Rahway River, which has a vast majority of trees and vegetation. On the northeast side and to the east, we primarily have some residential homes that butt up to the adjacent park. However, there is a tree buffer that is located between the park and those residential homes. I'd like to bring to your attention, as far as the parks themselves, as far as our facility, you'll see here the closest residential home to us is located on, lost my spot. Well, we have the roadway located to the north here. The closest home is it's on St. Germain Drive. It's located 660 feet to the far edge of our track, to the closest home on St. Germain, and then on D'Antonio Road, we are about 715 feet to the closest residential home in that location. So now that we have a general overview of the surroundings of the park, I'd like to take a closer look at the existing park and the amenities that we currently have at this park. So as you will see, our track and field, you have your track in the red, or it might be a pinkish color. You have the soccer field and track amenities within the interior of the field. And on the surroundings to the north and to the east, we have a number of baseball, softball diamonds that are utilized. Those particular fields all have their associated fencing and whatever other measures are required for the, well, there's backstop and, those items which are, fence material. Now located to the south of our complex, we have a picnic area. And then to the southwest is the Walter E. Ulrich Pool, which consists of a kiddie pool. It has an Olympic-sized pool and a diving pool and associated buildings such as the bathhouse, has concessions, and then the various pump houses and maintenance buildings. That particular complex is surrounded by a chain link fence. Then to the west of our property, we have 4 tennis courts, which again are fenced in. Those tennis courts have recreation lighting so that they can be utilized during the evening hours. The poles are 60 foot in height. And then to the west of the tennis courts, we also have some basketball courts. There's associated parking in random locations throughout the facility that are utilized for the different amenities within the park. Now located also to the northwest, we have the existing playgrounds, and within that same vicinity we have, again, restroom, concession building that are supported by the park. And I would also like to note, and it's not, I apologize, it's not located on this slide, but we also have the World War II Veterans Memorial trees, which are located primarily in the southern and southwest region of the facility, which are outside of our park improvements that we're proposing. Now that I have provided some background regarding the existing surrounding areas, I'd like to get into some of the items that were evaluated during the design phase. The first of those elements is the environmental constraints for the site. So typically, what I like to do is just walk you through the day in the life of an engineer when we're given a project, as far as what we need to evaluate, what we need to look into to make sure that we are doing the proper design from an environmental perspective. One of those first items that we look at is whether or not the site, especially in the case of this, because we have the Rahway River, we need to evaluate to make sure that our property is not located within a flood hazard area or a flood-prone area. So as you will see, one of the documents that the DP has us utilize is the FEMA maps, which you'll see here. The blue shaded areas are, you have the floodway, you have your flood hazard area, and all those limits. As you'll see, our track is the red box, and as you can see from this map, our site is outside of the flood hazard area. So as that's the case, there's no NJDEP land use permitting requirements related to the flood hazard area for the project. So that's one element that we did not need to take into consideration for our project, while there's other measures that we need to look into as well. So the next item is related to wetlands and any associated buffers that are related to those wetlands. A document that is readily available to the public, as well as us engineers, is provided by the NJDEP, and it's called the GeoWeb program. On that program, we're able to pick up the wetlands information, which you'll find here in blue, which, as again, you'll see, our track is located here in the middle, and there's no wetlands associated with those particular improvements. So again, nothing related to the wetlands, so we are not required to obtain any of the wetlands permitting that would potentially be required if we were down in one of the areas near the river. And also, as far as the site itself, I mean, as you can see, we are outside, again, out of the flood hazard area and also the wetlands. I'd just like to note, for the existing surroundings, the field is one of the higher locations within the park complex. Another item that's also looked at, again on the GEO website, is related to some of the other environmental elements within the confines of the area. In particular, of concern is your threatened and endangered species. As you'll see on this map here, from the GEO website, our particular facility, again, is outside of any of the confines of any potential endangered species or any potential habitat for those particular species. So as an engineer, we would not further evaluate anything as there's no indication of those particular elements within the confines of the park, at least within our design area, which is the track. And then, well, next item that we would get into, now that we've evaluated the environmental constraints, we've determined that there really is no NJDP land use permitting that would be required as part of the improvements. We've got to also take into consideration some of the site constraints related to the facility, and trying to make sure that the improvements fit the need and the proper field location and orientation is met, that the uses of the fields are determined and the proper age group so that the size of the fields are adequately sized for the age group, and that we provide the proper use for the county and the residents of the county, so that the athletic programs and different recreation, have what they need. Then we also, as part of the design process, we've got to look at existing trees and making sure that, we try to minimize impact to the trees and any of the other items within the surroundings. And then also, you have the existing facilities, your baseball fields, your pool, your tennis courts, your, the lawn areas, and different elements of that. So we looked at all those different elements during the design process to make sure that we met the needs for those different items, to make sure that we have the best product for the community. Now, as far the other item also is related to stormwater runoffs. I'll get into more of that in depth once we get into the design portion, or the proposed design of the facility. But we also take that into consideration as well to make sure at the end of the day that there's no impact to the stormwater runoff from the facility, so that we are reducing, or we're matching or reducing the runoff from the site, so that there's no impact to the downstream properties as a result of any improvements to the facility. Now, just to give you an idea, here's some photos from the park within the surroundings of the proposed track. Well, there's an existing track. The improvements to the track. Located here in the top left corner, you'll see there's the row of trees, which is due west to the existing track. That was one of the items that we wanted to make sure that we weren't taking down any of those trees during the construction. I mean, it provides a beautiful scenery, and it provides some nice shade in that particular area. It just gives a nice perception to the park. So as part of our design process, we wanted to make sure that we were not going to be removing any of those trees. Now, the top right corner, you'll see here, this is the east side looking to the south from the track. This is the existing baseball field just due east of the track. Again, we had to take into consideration, impact to the existing facilities. So your baseball field. We have trees here. Unfortunately, and I'll get into it later, we do need to have some impact to trees within the park. But as part of our design process and part of the county's county park systems regulations is, for every tree you take down, we put back two. So we incorporate that into our design process. Now, if you'll take notice here, this existing, which is an evergreen tree, it currently encroaches within the existing track as it is now. So the current track that is there, which has reached its useful life, is encroached by several limbs on the tree within 1 to 2 lanes of the track. So currently there is a hazard to the existing conditions. And that was some of the thought process behind removal of trees and not removal of trees. Now in the lower left-hand corner, you'll see here, this was the picnic area that's to the due south of the existing track. Again, we wanted to make sure that we didn't cause any impact or negative impact to the park area. I know the times that I've been there, the park is heavily used by people, and people are using the grills and picnicking and enjoying being out in the nature and having a good time. Also, the bottom right corner, this is just another view of those the same trees up in the upper left-hand corner, just a view from within the lawn area. And then again, here's just another view of the existing tracks and the conditions of the stuff. So as you'll see here, the current track it's a 6-lane track with the fields and different amenities surrounding there. And you can see in the lower left-hand corner the existing trees that are encroaching within the track as we stand now. So now here we are. Here's our proposed improvements. This is just a color rendering just to give you a general idea, seeing the overview of the existing complex, giving you an idea of the existing layout of the of the proposed improvements to the park. I know things aren't labeled here. We'll get into all that in a later slide as well when I get into the design of the park improvements. All right. Sorry, I have to kind of jumped ahead and not moved my notes here, so I have to apologize. Okay. So for the project itself, so for this project location, the track and field was relatively, so different items that we had to look at was the field location. So in this particular instance, we have an existing track. So it was relatively simple to make a determination on where the track and the orientation was going to go. We wanted to limit any impact to the surrounding areas, so the ideal situation would be to locate the track within the confines of the existing track. The proposed track does have a slightly larger footprint as we are going from a 6-lane track to an 8-lane track, which meets the requirements of the high school standards for typical track, which is what we're trying to make the track accommodate and provide the best use for your local track and field teams as well as for the high schools and local areas. So as far as the track, we wanted to limit disturbance to the surrounding areas. Like I said, we want to make sure that we're limiting disturbance to the trees on this side, as we felt that there was a better perception of those trees. We wanted to also not impact any of the existing ball fields, because it doesn't make sense to be disturbing, the existing facilities if they're not in need of upgrade. As far as the location for the field, the track, what we ended up doing was we decided to hold the existing edge of that existing track so that any of our encroachment for the wider track, which essentially, I think it pushed us about 20 feet to the west on our design, would not impede into your open space within the park, and it would just encroach closer towards your existing trees as well as to your more developed portion of the park where the pool and the tennis courts are located. As I had mentioned, the cluster of trees in this corner here, we felt that they need to come down as the trees currently encroach into the track, and they will encroach further into the new track, and potentially the root system will end up getting damaged during construction of the project. The other thing we had to keep into consideration was clear zones of the existing facility, i.e. your baseball fields. Typically you have a clear zone which is of 25 feet. Clear zone basically, for those who don't know, it's a buffer for baseball off of your baseline. It's an area that's kept clear so that when the kids or people are playing, that there's nothing of obstruction that could cause any injuries to the players. So we wanted to keep that in mind as far as our location as well. So we made sure that we kept that in the back of our mind when we were laying that out. The other items we also wanted to keep in mind also was anything of height, proposed height, we wanted to keep out of the open space of the park. So what we ended up doing was tucking a number of these items along the tree line so that it blends in and isn't as obstructive to the view within the park. These orange items down here, this is a multi-purpose building. We have 2 open-air pavilions that are tucked into the picnic area. And then there's also going to be some bleachers, within the facility, and there will be flags. I'll get into that. Please wait. And then I also show on here some proposed trees to compensate for the removal of the trees in here. The location really is just arbitrary at this point. The locations will be evaluated, at a later date. This is just the presentation of the proposed improvements. We will be putting trees back. The locations will be determined so that it accentuates the park and provides the best appearance for the park and not obstruct views. Okay, so this slide here, this is a more detailed view of the proposed improvements, and this is where I'll get into your seating capacity for the bleachers and some of the other elements. So as far as the proposed improvements, we have an 8-lane, 400-meter synthetic track that'll be a red color with white striping. As part of the track system to collect the runoff, there'll be on the interior will be a series of drains to collect the runoff, which will ultimately be piped into the new drainage system as part of the improvements. Then on the inside, we have, as part of the track also, we have the different amenities for the high jump, long jump, and also the pole vault. And we've also incorporated into it the discus and javelin, as well as the shot put area tucked away in the southeast corner of the field. Now, as far as on the interior, we're proposing to have a synthetic turf field, which will be striped for football, soccer, as well as for lacrosse. All dimensions for the fields will be in accordance with the high school standards, which is the county standards for their park complexes for past projects that they've been working on. Now, with respect to the turf field, I know a lot of people's concerns are that the turf fields shed new runoff, the water causes more harm. Typically, the fields and the field that we're proposing that's designed for this site has an extensive underground collection system for the site runoff. The entire area that's green will basically, it's going to have perforated pipe, which is pipe with holes in it, spaced out at 20-foot intervals throughout the entire field, and it'll all be laid within a bed of stone, which will allow stormwater recharge within the field area. All those pipes will be interconnected with the track drain, which then will tie into our proposed underground stormwater system, which will be designed as well to collect the runoff from the site, and it'll be recharging the water into the ground, which is a requirement from the DEP for their stormwater regs. So the groundwater recharge will take care of our water quality issues, and it also act as our water quantity being reduction in flow from the proposed improvements to the site. So at the end of the day, when this project is completed, with the incorporation of the field drainage system and the stone, as well as the new stormwater collection system, which will be around the perimeter of the existing lawn areas and the oversized piping, there will be a reduction in flow from the proposed improvement area. Existing drainage as it exists today, I'm sorry, it's not clear on here, but there's an existing inlet up in the western portion of the track, to the west of the track near the existing paved area. That piping discharges to the pond that is located to the south of our complex, which ultimately discharges into the Rahway River. On the eastern side of our complex, you'll see a dark gray box here. That's the existing inlet that's within the lawn area. There's existing piping that is believed to tie into the existing drainage that's currently there for the existing grass field and track. That particular drainage goes to the east, which ties into a tributary to the Rahway River as well. So that gives you a general overview of the proposed drainage system without boring you to death without all the engineering calcs and stuff. As far as the site itself, we are proposing to put up a 4-foot high black vinyl fence, 4-foot high chain link vinyl coated fence. That will be around the perimeter of the track. The purpose behind the fencing is not to keep the public out. I mean, it's a county facility. When we encourage people to use the county facilities. So the purpose behind the fencing is just to keep the unwanted vehicles and motorized vehicles from damaging the track as well as the turf, because those vehicles can cause extensive damage, costly damage to the facility if somebody decides to get in there. Now on to the question from the audience regarding the bleachers. So there's going to be 2 sets of bleachers at the complex. We have the home side and the away side. The proposed bleachers for the complex, it's a 10-row high bleacher that will be mounted directly onto the ground. There won't be any, as I'm sure a number of you have seen at complexes, they have the raised bleachers, which are off the ground by 3 or 4 feet. The bleachers that we're proposing for this site will not be elevated. Everything will be mounted on the ground. So it'll be a 10-row deep bleacher. On the home side of the field, there'll be seating capacity for 800 people. And on the away side of the field, there'll be seating capacity for 400 people. Each sets of bleachers will accommodate, will have spacing designated for the handicapped people, as well as we will be providing concrete sidewalks and also an asphalt path that connect into the existing path for handicap accessibility. The walkways will be, they will also interconnect to, and I will get into this shortly, the proposed multi-purpose building, which will have a bathroom, concession, and storage, so that the people have access to the different amenities during the event at the complex when they're in attendance. Now, on the home side of the field, there will be a coach's box that will be off the back side of the bleachers. Access to that box will be from the top row of the bleachers. The coach's box will be for the coaches during the game to be overseeing the kids at a higher level so they can get a better view of what's going on and relay information to the coaches down on the field, as well as for purpose of videoing the games for use for later times. Now, again, touching on the bases, again, we ended up this corner over here, which is the southeast corner. There's a series of trees, 1, 2, 3, there's 6 of them all together. Those will be removed as a result of the track and sidewalk encroaching on them, and we're going to be replanting another 12 trees. Again, the location is just arbitrary to have them on here at this point. The exact location will be determined at a later date. Now on to the multi-purpose building. The multi-purpose building, again, as I had mentioned earlier, it's going to serve a function of concession for the sporting events. There will be an element of the building that is for storage of the different components from the track and field to anything related to the field, as well as for the concession stand. And then also to accommodate the spectators and the athletes that are at the complex. We're also going to have the restrooms in that particular area with drinking fountains and stuff for them to utilize. The thought process behind the multi-purpose building, and it was really to keep everything as one uniform building as opposed to multi-buildings and having to spread them across the area. So the idea was to kind of consolidate some of the the obstructions of view so that everything was kind of isolated into one area as opposed to having multiple ones throughout the complex of the track and field. And again, we tucked that building within the existing trees down by the park, as well as the row of trees that we had seen the picture of earlier. Also, as part of the site amenities for the facility, there's a proposed scoreboard for the football games, as well as for any of the other sports that are there. Directly behind it, you will see three little dots. We're going to have 3 flag poles. There'll be a 40-foot tall one in the middle and 2 35-foot flag poles on the outside. I think it's what we can. The dimension, it's 18 feet wide, 10.5 feet high. So as far as the improvements, again, if you want to ask questions, put that on your sheet. But
Excuse me, thank you. You've been very patient. We'd like to have him finish the presentation, and then we'll do the Q&A. Thanks.
All right. So again, we had the flag poles, and again, your higher, taller obstructions, like I had mentioned earlier, we tried to keep everything of height closer to the trees so that your impact to your sight lines and stuff was not impeded by any of the amenities and supporting structures to the field that we've incorporated. The other two items that you'll see are two orange boxes. Those are open-air pavilions that will be serving a multi-function. The first function will be as we are in the picnic areas. They'll have picnic tables in there so that the people can go in there, have their lunches, have a good time at the park. And then during the evening hours for the sporting events, it can be utilized for the teams to congregate in there and have their meetings for halftime and before the game. In addition to that, we also are proposing field lighting at the complex so that the fields can be utilized, throughout the different times of the year. As I know in my own town, there's issues, there's not enough fields, not enough time to get all the practices in. So, the solution is to have, the lighting on it. So there's 4 proposed lights. Roughly each one is located at the 15-yard line on both sides. The proposed lighting is 70 feet high, and which is your standard height for any athletic field, that is being built. As far as the lighting, I will get into that a little bit more as I get into my presentation here. Now, to give you just a general visual perspective to the improvements that we're proposing, I provided here a park that was recently completed for the County of Union, which is Warrenaco Park, which is located in Roselle and Elizabeth. As you'll see, you have the synthetic, we have the turf field, the white striping is for football, yellow is for soccer, and then we have the red striping for the lacrosse. Same setup as we have proposed for Rahway River Park. We have an 8-lane track, red synthetic material with a black vinyl coated chain link fence. As you can see in the photos, the nice thing about the black vinyl chain link fence is it kind of blends in with the surroundings and doesn't give you those obstructions of view. Inclusive of, at our park, these are a similar layout of the bleachers we're proposing. The only difference between these bleachers and the proposed ones is the seating capacity of them. However, these are the same 10-row high or 10-row deep bleachers. With respect to the multi-purpose building, again, this is just an example of what was constructed over at Warrenaco Park. Similar in nature to what we're proposing to do, concession, storage, and also the restrooms. Now, our building that we're proposing at Rahway River Park will be slightly longer to accommodate additional storage of the track and field amenities, where at Warrenaco Park, they have some other supporting structures for storage, as well as some other more areas to store some of those items. Also, you will see we have the proposed field lighting. You can see that here in the photos as well for them. And these are the same height, 70 feet, that are being proposed at the Rahway River Park. Okay, so that just gives you a visual aspect of essentially what we are looking to do over at Rahway River Park. Now on to the lighting element for the field. As I had mentioned, it's a 70-foot tall pole, 4 of them situated at roughly around the 15-yard line. I know a lot of people's concerns at times and is related to the light glare and encroachment of the lights. The field itself, your field levels that they will see on the athletic field are around 50-foot candles is the average Around the track, you have around 20 to 30. Those are the lighting levels that are required for safe, playing of those athletes, on the field so that they have the proper sight. The nice thing nowadays is the lighting manufacturers have invested a lot of time and effort into coming up with ways to minimize the light glare so that you don't have that obstruction of view or the light glare from them. And they've installed the house shields and stuff like that to prevent the light from going into those areas. Now, what you'll see on here, what this is illustrating, this line out here is essentially it's 200 feet away from the proposed track. The lighting levels from those lights on the field, it ranges from the levels are significantly low. I mean, your average foot candle, I think, was 0.08, which is minimal amount of light, and that's 200 feet outside of the field. As I had mentioned earlier on, residential homes, the closest residential home is 660 feet away from from the proposed track improvements. So the lighting levels, by the time you get to to those residential homes, the light glare will be negligible, as shown in the image here. Now, as far as the lights themselves, here's just an example of the shields that have been installed on them, so that the light that's projected out of them is focused onto the field, and it prevents that light glare that a lot of people have experienced. Or if you look out and you see the glow coming off of them, it directs it down to the field. And just to give you an idea here, here's an example of the multi-purpose building, the style of the building that we are looking to go with, or proposing to go with. It gives it a more rustic look. It kind of holds along with the similarity of the existing concession building, where it has the stone on the lower portion and the different amenities of it. That's your multi-purpose building style. Again, everything's currently proposed. We're fine-tuning different elements of the design to meet the needs of the community. And also, here's an idea. Here gives you an idea of the open-air pavilion. The open-air pavilion, just as it says, as I'm saying, is open air. I mean, there's really no enclosures to it. And as part of our amenities, we are going to include some minimal lighting so that while they're there on a Friday night, they're not sitting there in the dark. I mean, the lighting will be your standard, 60, 75 watt light bulb. It won't be anything of substance. And again, holding with the same characteristics of the multi-purpose building, going again with the stone on the lower portion of the structure. The idea is really to kind of tie in all the different elements of the park so that we have a uniform look within the confines of that park. All right, and again, here's the proposed improvements. We've touched on, the locations. We tried to keep anything of height structure within the confines of the trees. The track location was located based on the existing footprint, with the idea of not impeding upon existing baseball fields, while trying not to encroach any additional, not encroaching within, the open space within the park. The bleachers and the coach box was located as such to not impact any of the trees, so that, we had to take any trees down along this nice row of oak trees along the existing asphalt path. As well as we tried to keep all these elements, within the areas of the higher developed portions of the of the park itself, so that, you know, we keep that open nature of the existing park. And so, anyway, I'd like to thank you very much for your time and allowing me to present the proposed improvements at the Rahway River Park.
Thank you very much, Dave. Appreciate that. Now, I'm going to ask our Public Safety Director, Andrew Moran, to make a few comments relative to parking issues.
I'll be very brief in my comments. I know you have a lot of questions, and we want to get to the question and answer period. But the county police, along with the Rahway Police, the city, the Board of Education, have partnered to address any potential traffic or parking issues. The Rahway Police and the county police have a long history of collaborating and coordinating events. So from that aspect, this is not new for us. Together, we've identified several satellite parking locations in the event additional parking is needed. The city and Board of Education are planning to coordinate a shuttle service to and from these satellite locations if they're needed. As with all events held in a county park, our county police evaluate the proposed event, coordinate with local agencies, and develop an action plan that addresses both security and traffic concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. With that, I'm going to ask our County Counsel, Robert Barry, to make a few comments relative to potential next steps in the process.
Thank you, Al. Thank you. Basically, after tonight's presentation, the proposed scope and design will be presented to the Board of Chosen Freeholders Park Committee. That committee will review and make recommendations to the board as a whole. The board would then consider those recommendations and make a final determination as to what it feels should be the scope and design of this project. Once that is completed, there would be additional negotiations with the City of Rahway and probably the Board of Education relative to a final use agreement. Moving on from there, and once at least as terms of how the board wishes the scope and design to look, the use agreement with Rahway would be submitted to DEP, and depending upon the final scope and design, any additional requirements by DEP would be addressed. Upon the conclusion of the DEP involvement, the only remaining item would be then, of course, the preparation of bid specifications and the issuance of those bid specifications and award for the movement of the project. And that is basically the process.
Thank you very much, Bob. What we're going to do now is collect the questions. Our staff's going to go around and collect all the cards from everyone, gather them up, and then we'll begin the Q&A. As I mentioned, questions that relate to the design and scope of the project will be those that are responded to. Thank you. This shouldn't take very long, and we'll make sure that everyone's cards are collected, and then we'll begin the question and answer part. Is the design of the bleachers self-limiting to size, or can more seats be added some future plan? That's a lot to remember.
That's a lot of questions there.
Well,
All right.
give him a minute, he will.
So as far as the total footprint of the project, I mean, the largest element obviously is going to be your track. Your existing track is a 400-meter track with your fields inside of it. Your football field's 160 feet by 360 feet. Soccer field's 180 by 336. The total square foot disturbance, unfortunately, I don't have that number with me tonight. and I have to apologize for that one.
I think so, width, length,
I can measure it off. I have to apologize. I mean, the footprint of the existing track versus the new track, if that's what you are concerned with, is. Well, you want me to answer questions, or do you want me to answer?
yeah,
those
we're not gonna
questions?
do it this, it's not gonna go that way. Go ahead, Dave.
I mean, the existing track, it's a 400-meter track. Unfortunately, okay, well, thank you. I can't measure it off on the screen. I have to apologize. So as far as
Go
the
ahead, Dave.
bleachers themselves, the bleachers, I'm not the bleacher manufacturer. They are designed to be a certain size. You order them from the manufacturer to the width that you are desiring. It is not the intention of the project to add any additional bleachers than beyond what is proposed currently at the site. As far as the dates of the floodplain map, the FEMA map has an effective date of 2006, which that's the effective date, and that's what we have to go by.
Again, he's gonna answer the question. Yes, we're not gonna
was
have,
dates of the
we're not gonna
floodplain.
go that, it's not gonna go that way. It's just not gonna go, it's just not gonna go. And he's just not gonna go that way. Go ahead, Dave.
The question as it states here, for your information, it says, what are the dates of the floodplain map? The answer to your question, as I had said, the effective date of the floodplain map is September 20th, 2006. That is the effective date. There is no other mapping that is effective by FEMA at the current moment. The maps that you guys are screaming about, those are not effective they're not effective. They're not the authority on the site at this time. As far as the GeoWeb maps, those documents are taken from their website, which they regularly update. The last update on those maps for the wetlands was 2012. I'm not sure what the date for the landscape project. I can assure you that on the bottom left corner of the map, I personally went onto their website on 6/25/2015 and got the documents for those. If, I can't vouch for when the data was from, I can tell you that, those are the dates.
Okay, next question is, will lighting affect the people that live around the park?
As I had mentioned in the presentation, the proposed lighting for the athletic fields have the house side shields on them to direct the lighting onto the field and reduce and minimize any impacts to the surrounding areas. As the slide had shown, 200 feet away from the field, the foot candles was 0.08 foot candles. To give you an idea of lighting levels, I mean, your standard room, the lighting levels needed to be 5-foot candles. So the lighting level that is encountered 200 feet from the field is very minimal. So with that answers the question.
Next question is,
The
I'm
closest
sorry.
house, sorry. The closest house, again, as I had mentioned in the presentation, is, that's to the rear yard, was 660 feet. So, the lighting level, another 400-plus feet from those lights is going to be minimal, if any at all.
Thanks. Next question is, I would like to know how this design stops the flooding that happens now in Rahway River Park.
Unfortunately, I mean, the scope of the project was, this isn't a flood design project. The park itself, the improvements were required to reduce the runoff from the site, which has been done as part of the design. We're reducing the flow for the various storm events in accordance with the DEP requirements for, the various storm events, the 2-year, the 2, the 10, and the 100-year storm event. Those flows from the site for the 2-year have been reduced by 50%. The 10-year is 75%, I believe, and then the latter 100 is 80%. So the total runoff from the site has been reduced as part, will be reduced as part of these improvements.
Again, we're not gonna do it this way. We have questions that were submitted, and I'm going to give those questions to our panel here. That's the way this is gonna work. The next question is, which authorities have you consulted regarding the impact of the sound system on wildlife?
As far as impact, to the animals, unfortunately, I don't have an answer to that at this moment. I mean,
If the answer is you don't know, well, then that's your answer, or you haven't consulted with it. Your answer is what the answer is.
right. I don't have an answer to that.
Okay, then that's your answer. That's fine. This will be for Director Moran. Will additional parking be added to the park to accommodate the additional visitors to the stadium? And will a traffic light be added to the St. George entrance exit? You got those two?
I don't believe there's any plans for a traffic light at the entrance to the park on St. George Avenue. We did look at the parking in the park. There's 207 spots, designated parking spots in striped areas in the park. And on Park Drive, as I'm sure most of you are aware, there's parking on the side of Park Drive, in addition to the 2 lanes of traffic that travel in one-way direction. And there's room for about 230 cars parked alongside Park Drive that's within the park. So there's no plans right now to add any additional parking.
Thank you. Next question is, does there have to be a fence around the track? Many people use the track when there are no formal events.
Well, I'm not aware of, whether the fence is to be there or not to be there. I mean, it appears the concern and the question is, access for, people to the facility. There's gates on the fence which will be unlocked so that people have access to the facility during the park operational hours.
This is a question for County Council. Who is responsible for legal notices to advise local residents about any proposed construction, and when would these be sent?
To the extent that there are notices required, that would be the clerk of the board, with assistance from my office in terms of any people who are required to be notified or any notices relative to any additional hearings. Is there a second part?
I'm sorry, Bob?
Well, it really does depend upon what would be required by DEP in terms of what, if any, additional hearings or what additional notices would have to go out. It does depend upon them. In most instances, a notice of 30 days at a minimum, but it really depends upon whether any additional hearings would be required. It awaits the determination of the board as to the final design and scope of the project.
The next question is, the engineer designed the drainage system as a series of pipes set in stone that eventually lead to the river and tributaries of the river. What is the impact on the turf, all the little black pieces that are present there? And are these pieces going to go into the river? Do you have that?
I got the last part.
Okay. Maybe I'm reading a little too fast. I'll try to slow down. Sorry about that. Yeah, yeah. Said the little, well, I read the question, the little
right.
pieces that go into the river was the way it was written.
So, I mean, as far as the little rubber particles, or, oh, anyway, the rubber that's in the field, I mean, the stuff is designed, you know, to stay within the field. I mean, as far as the stormwater drainage system, that is below the surface, you know, of the complex, you know, of your field. So those particles aren't going to be getting into, you know, the piping that's underneath the field. And we also have, you know, the water quality structures that will allow any of those particles to settle down into the system. It's going to, there's no, at this, well, never mind.
Yes. Next question is, what methods will be used to mitigate stormwater runoff produced by this project or development? I don't want to, that was the question.
I believe during my presentation, I had discussed the stormwater collection system for the site. There's a number of means. There's perforated pipe underneath the turf field. There's inlets around the perimeter of the complex within the existing lawn areas to collect all the runoff. And then the piping has been oversized to provide our detention for the runoff into the from the runoff from the storm events.
That question was asked about the FEMA maps. During athletic events, will the public have access across the park for other purposes? I guess Dave and/or Andrew?
So, I guess the question they're having is access to other items to the park?
During athletic events, will the public have access to the park for other purposes? So I assume the question is, will other people be able to do other things if a particular event's going on that they would normally do? I'm assuming that's the question.
I mean, that appears to be an operations question. I mean, I can tell you, I mean, it's a county park that's open to the county. I mean, whether there's a sporting event going on or, you know, something else, the other amenities are open to the park goers to utilize. They won't obviously be able to, if someone's playing a football game, they're not going to be able to use the football field.
Okay.
But that is,
Okay. How high is off the ground is the scoreboard? How wide is it? What's the field size? And what are the dimensions of the stadium project?
we asked that question. So as far as the scoreboard, it's, the actual physical scoreboard itself is 10.5 feet high, 18 feet high. That will then be mounted approximately 10 feet off the ground so that it's visible by, you know, the people within the bleachers. Dimensions we've discussed already. Are we asking this, or? I believe that was the questions, right? Was these on the back?
Was there something on the back? I missed it.
Or did you?
I don't know if they're relevant.
Yep, question on the other side. What product have you specified and what base material and fill material will be used and what is the quote-unquote grass made of?
Sure. You know, as far as the field material, I mean, we're still in the design phase of it. You know, it's been the county's position on past projects, Warren-Echo Field, which was probably the last project that was completed as part of the county park improvements. We went with the crumb rubber and sand infill with your standard, you know, standard turf material that's out there.
I believe this question was asked, but I'll ask it again. During events such as football games, how is parking and traffic going to be handled? And Director, maybe you could reiterate comments that you had made previously and maybe expand a little bit if you wish.
Certainly. Whenever we have an event at a county park, regardless if it's Rahway Park or Warnaco or Cedarbrook, we meet with the organizers of that event, estimate what the attendance is going to be at that event, and we develop an action plan. We coordinate with the local municipality, police department, to make sure that both the county police and the local department is represented there, and then a plan is developed. Certainly, if a football game is played at night at Rahway, parking will be less of an issue because the other fields are not lit, and more of the parking spots along the roadway on the interior of the park will be available. So,
Thanks, Ian. Next question is, are there going to be showers or lockers?
There is nothing proposed for showers or lockers at the complex.
Why was there no environmental impact statement done?
Purpose behind the improvements is essentially you're taking an existing track, an existing field, and you're redoing it. So the environmental impact is, negligible from that perspective. There's nothing that warrants an environmental impact to an existing facility. It's the same as if you had something at your house. If you had to redo your house, you're going to submit an environmental impact statement? No.
Not going to argue it. Not going to argue it.
Okay. The same question was asked already, updated the year of the FEMA flood map. Again, what are the parking requirements and how are they going to be addressed? I believe that was just answered. Next question is, are you going to put up sound barriers to shield homes from the noise? I hear them when they announce the pool is closing.
I mean, as I presented in the application, there's nothing that is proposed, there's no sound barriers proposed at this time.
How loud will speakers, in parentheses, will the events be, and how bright will the lights affect, how bright lights will affect wildlife and impact the environment?
As far as the lighting, I mean, there's already existing lighting at the facility, so there's lighting at the track. I mean, at the tennis court, I apologize. There's already existing lighting at the complex for the tennis courts, and, as far as impact to the, you already have the lights there now, so.
Dave, in your presentation, I believe you spoke to the type of lighting. Maybe you want to just repeat that component?
I mean, the lighting itself, it's your typical field lighting, with the light poles that are 70 feet high. The lighting is projected down towards the field with the lighting levels de minimis around the surrounding areas. So the impact to your bugs and bunnies in the surrounding areas, should be negligible. Everything, you want me to answer the question? As far as the field lights will be turned off when the use is done. I don't know the hours of operation of the complex. That's
The Parks Department has rules and regulations regarding when lights are turned off, and we'll adhere to those regulations.
Well, they only got to be on in terms of when there's an operation.
Right. Okay. The field will have facilities for which of the following track and field events? High jump, long jump, pole vault, discus, shot put, javelin. And second question, how long is the field warranted for?
The site amenities for the track and
This one in
field,
the
all
back,
that
too.
you have listed there are on there. As far as the warranty for the field, I can't tell you that because right now, we don't have a field. We don't have, the project would have to go out to bid, and whoever is the low bidder on the project will submit their product, and they'll have their warranty lifetime that's with it. I mean, your typical warranty from the manufacturers these days is anywhere from 8 to 10 years on the field.
You probably answered this question, but I'll ask it anyway because it was written. Has the installer installed other synthetic turf fields in Union County? Again, probably what you
I
just
mean,
stated.
as far as the installer, again, the project has to go out to bid before an installer can even be selected.
Right. Right.
I believe the question he read was what I answered. Has
I read the
installer
question
installed
verbatim.
fields?
I read the question verbatim. Will the shot put, discus, and javelin throws land on the synthetic field surface?
The layout of those is within the lawn area. So the answer is no. However, it doesn't, you can have those items on the field, you just have to have special tips for that stuff. But the layout as proposed and showed is within the lawn area.
What are the dimensions of the multipurpose building?
The multi-purpose building is, the width is 25 feet, the length is a little over 56 feet long. 25 feet wide, 56 feet 8 inches long. That's the proposed building subject to review.
Again, I think this was addressed, but it was asked, will the lighting be turned off by default?
I mean, I can't attest.
Again, I'm reading them verbatim.
I can't attest to the operations of the lighting, within the county. I mean, they'll have, the ability to turn things on and off as need be. But again, it falls under, a county standard protocol for their facility.
And standard, I could tell you that standard protocol facilities is no later than 10 p.m. What steps, if any, are being taken to minimize trash and other contaminants from reaching the river?
I mean, as far as the measures taken, I mean, they'll be, as part of the project, they're gonna, as with any project within the county, is we're providing trash receptacles and recycling containers throughout the complex. Unfortunately, it's out of everybody's hands as far as whether people throw it in the garbage or not, but the amenities will be provided so that people can properly throw their garbage out.
How many lumens in the entire lighting system?
Unfortunately, I don't have the answer to the total lumens in it. I can tell you as I testified in the presentation, the average foot candles across the field will be 50 within the field element.
Again, may have been asked previously, but how many square feet is occupied by the field and all related building improvements?
I mean, your total footprint is roughly 200 by 500 as far as your athletic field and track. Your building is still within the confines of that portion. I mean, the building dimensions, if you want to add them in, add them in.
Well, again, and it may be a supplemental question. What is the height of the coaches, box, and lighting and speakers?
Well, the coach's box, will, to the top portion of the box will be 19 feet off the ground. And the other items we had previously answered.
Okay. Where is the proposed satellite parking lot?
We've discussed four that are within the city, but they have yet to be vetted out, and we're just in a preliminary stage of looking into that. So it'd be premature to mention any specific locations in the city.
When will the plan be published? I'm not exactly sure what it's referred to by plan.
I'm not sure what, I
It's
mean,
just how the question reads.
I'm not sure how to answer that one. I mean,
I'm not aware of any publication requirements whatsoever.
Regarding concern for the classic Olmsted feature, the Great Lawn, has or will a landscape architectural firm that specializes in historic landscapes approve the design of the project?
No, I mean, it's the, you know, not aware of anything at the moment, and it's open for discussion between the Parks Committee.
Have freshwater waterfronts and upland waterfront permits been obtained from the Division of Land Use Regulation, taking into account the effects of the project on historical properties?
Well, as I presented in our presentation, you know, the wetlands are not within the confines of our complex. And we have, you know, we've had conversations with the DEP regarding the project, and they have no concerns with the proposed improvements that are before you tonight.
Okay, that was the final question that was new. All the other questions were redundant and had been asked previously. I'd like to, again, as I had mentioned, that pertained to the design and the scope of the presentation. I'd like to thank you all for coming tonight. Have a good evening and drive home safely.